Welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're looking at some sources a listener sent in, actually.
Interesting ones, too.
Yeah, really interesting. And they don't just, inform, they feel more like, well, a call to arms, almost.
That's a good way to put it. There's a real urgency there. It's the work of an author, a philosopher named Titus.
Right, Titus. And he's putting forward this really quite radical framework.
He is. He's merging these ancient Stoic principles, discipline, resilience.
With let's call it the brutal reality of modern digital life, the constant distraction.
Exactly. He doesn't see losing your attention as just like a productivity issue.
No, it's deeper than that for him.
Much deeper. He frames it as a philosophical crisis, maybe even a moral one.
Yeah. And these sources, they really push for this idea of extreme discipline, what he actually calls philosophical resistance.
Resistance against, essentially, the systems designed to chip away at our free will, our attention.
So our mission today, let's be clear, is to really extract the blueprints from this. How do we reclaim that agency, that attention?
We need to understand his core idea, this concept of a war against the algorithmic pull.
Yeah, because it's not just about time management tips, is it? It feels much bigger.
Oh, definitely. It's presented almost as a survival guide for the mind in this age.
And that tension, I think, is what makes this so compelling for a deep dive.
What tension is that specifically?
Well, you've got this ancient wisdom, right? Stoicism. All about inner control, virtue, focusing on what you can control.
Yeah, timeless stuff. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca.
Exactly. And Titus is aiming that directly at this hypermodern problem, the phone in your pocket, the infinite scroll, the algorithms that, frankly, seem to know us disturbingly well.
Right. Can that ancient mindset, that resilience, actually hold up against, the billions of dollars poured into engineering our distraction by Silicon Valley?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the billion-dollar question now.
Probably.
So we really need to start at the foundation, how Titus sets things up. Because his terms, his definitions, they're very specific.
He doesn't mince words.
Okay, so Titus kicks things off with two key works mentioned in the sources, A Torch Samurai and The Way of the Stoic Diamond.
And just the titles alone tell you something, don't they?
They really do. Not exactly light reading suggestions. They signal a certain intensity, a demand for serious focus.
Right. Stoic diamond, that metaphor is pretty classic Stoicism, actually.
How so?
Well, the diamond represents the soul or maybe character. It's incredibly hard, pure, something refined under immense pressure.
Ah, okay. So it implies a kind of resilience that just can't be scratched by, trivial stuff, external nonsense.
Exactly. Impervious, forged. That's the Stoic ideal, in a way.
But the other title, A Torch Samurai, that's the one that really jumps out at me. It's such a unique blend.
It is. You've got the discipline of the samurai, that commitment to mastery, rigor, always being ready.
Mixed with the Stoic idea of the inner fortress, controlling your reactions.
Precisely. But then there's that first word, atoric. It's not common.
No. What are we thinking that means? What's the significance?
Well, digging into it, atoric seems to be pointing towards a state of being. Without affectation or illusion.
Without affectation or illusion. Okay, so like stripping away pretense.
Exactly. Think of it as a kind of profound intellectual clarity. It cuts through vanity, ego, all the comforting lies we might tell ourselves.
Especially the lies that maybe justify modern consumerism or just taking the easy way out.
That seems to be the implication. So if you embody this atoric samurai ideal...
You're what? A disciplined warrior of the mind?
Something like that. Operating purely based on reality. No curated social media persona, no susceptibility to advertising flattery.
And completely unbothered by what the crowd thinks.
Right. It's a kind of radical, philosophical minimalism, a rejection of softness, maybe?
Okay. And that foundation, that rejection of softness, is crucial for everything else he talks about.
Absolutely, because it leads directly to his core view of modern life, which he defines through one word: resistance. Constant, unrelenting resistance.
And for him, this isn't just a good idea, it's like a necessity.
He argues it's the primary act of philosophical living today, in the 21st century.
Why so absolute?
Because in his view, we're surrounded by an environment that is specifically engineered to make us soft, lazy, perpetually distracted. Think about the digital world.
Okay, yeah. Designed for ease of use, constant stimulation.
Right. So if that's your environment, Titus argues that living philosophically must involve actively counter-engineering your own character.
Like building your own internal resistance system.
Exactly. A constant fight against luxury, against comfort, against distraction. He calls these things the great anesthetizer of the soul.
Okay, I have to push back there a little. Is calling comfort the great anesthetizer, maybe? A bit overly dramatic?
It sounds harsh, yeah.
I mean, surely some modern comfort is good. It gives us the time and space to actually sit and discuss philosophy, rather than, hauling water all day. Isn't he kind of dismissing the progress that enables this reflection?
That's a really fair point, and I don't think Titus is arguing against, say, indoor plumbing.
Okay.
He's critiquing the psychological comfort, the expectation of effortlessness in everything.
The demand for ease.
Precisely. If we start equating ease with goodness subconsciously, we might begin rejecting anything that requires real effort. Physical training, deep study, confronting difficult truths.
Moral challenges.
Right. He argues that this psychological anesthetic dulls our capacity for truly profound thought, for meaningful action. The Stoic samurai has to constantly prove their readiness by choosing the harder path willingly.
Okay, so the discipline isn't about pointless suffering. It's a defense mechanism to keep your mind sharp against a system designed to make you passive.
That's the idea. Building that Stoic Daimon identity becomes an act of self-preservation, especially if you see the environment as fundamentally hostile to your focus.
And that hostile environment, that framing, leads us right into the next big idea, this central metaphor he uses.
Right. So Titus apparently frames a lot of this around a kind of philosophical dividing line, a debate about how we should conceptualize life itself.
He boils it down to two core metaphors, life as war versus life as a dance.
And these really do represent fundamentally different approaches to, well, everything. Reality, hardship, fate.
Let's break down the first one. Argument A, life is war. This sounds very classical Stoic.
It is. You hear echoes of Seneca, who often talked about life like a military campaign, needing constant vigilance.
So what does war imply in this context?
It implies deliberate struggle, actively fighting, constantly.
Fighting what?
Internally, fighting your own weaknesses, laziness, desire for too much comfort, distraction. Externally, fighting societal pressures, maybe chaos. And definitely for Titus, the constant barrage of digital noise.
So it implies strategy, mobilizing your resources.
Exactly. Your resources being things like clarity, time, focus. You have to deploy them strategically to defend your territory.
And the territory is your mind, your consciousness.
That's the core of it. And war, by its nature, is strenuous. It's demanding. It never really stops.
Okay. Then there's the alternative view. Argument B, life is a dance. This sounds, well, a lot nicer on the surface.
It does seem more appealing, especially today. We hear a lot about flow, going with the universe, that kind of thing.
So what does the dance metaphor suggest?
Fluidity, grace, adaptation, moving with the rhythm of things, perhaps fate, embracing change without fighting it.
It sounds less stressful, definitely. More about being present, calm, accepting.
But that's exactly where Titus pushes back. Hard.
For him, dance sounds like surrender.
Pretty much. He argues strongly for the war perspective. He sees the dance idea as seductive, yes, but ultimately leading to philosophical passivity. Moral laziness, even.
And this leads to one of his most striking statements.
Yeah.
The one designed to really shake you up.
Yeah, this is the core insight he offers here, trying to wake the listener up to their own potential passivity. He says, and this is a direct quote from the sources,
Go on.
"If you don't fight, you are a puppet, a marionette acting out someone else's play."
Wow. Okay. That's potent.
It really shifts the stakes, doesn't it? It's not about, am I happy dancing along?
No, it's, am I even in control? Am I autonomous?
Exactly. If you're just flowing, just dancing, where are you flowing? Wherever the current takes you.
The current of the algorithm, of consumer trends, of what everyone else is doing.
Precisely. And in that flow, you might lose your own will entirely. You become passive.
The dance implies accepting the music, right? But who's writing the music in our digital world?
Well, that's Titus's point. The music is increasingly composed by entities, corporations, platforms whose main goal is to monetize your attention.
So if you just gracefully adapt to that system.
You're essentially surrendering your autonomy. You're letting someone else pull the strings of the marionette. Passivity, for Titus, guarantees you become just a performer in a show run by others.
Now, the sources mention a counterpoint raised by someone named Norman during this debate.
Ah, yes, the animal courtship dances.
Right. Norman apparently suggested that even things we call a dance in nature, like birds doing courtship displays involve competition, strategy.
And that's a valid observation. Nature isn't passive. A courtship dance isn't just floating around. It's a performance with incredibly high stakes.
Survival, reproduction, there's strategic display involved, showing fitness.
Absolutely. Competition is inherent.
But I guess for Titus, that analogy doesn't quite hold when applied to our situation.
That seems to be his position, because natural competition, while strategic, is, well, organic. It's driven by biology over millennia.
Okay. Whereas the digital environment,
Artificially engineered, deliberately designed to hijack our existing biological or psychological weaknesses for profit.
right. It's not a natural ecosystem we're adapting to.
No. So the war metaphor becomes necessary because the force we're up against isn't just natural fate or biological competition. It's powerful external design systems.
We're not dancing with nature. We're battling algorithms. Algorithms backed by huge budgets and teams of experts in cognitive science.
Experts whose explicit goal is maximizing engagement, which often translates directly to minimizing your ability to choose where your attention goes.
So, if the opposition is engineered for compulsion, calling your response a dance is just missing the point. Dangerously naive.
It's a profound misreading of the threat level, in his view. It's more like a siege on your attention.
And a siege requires fortifications, a strategy,
Yeah.
a battle plan.
Yes. If your attention is under constant assault, you have to identify the enemy, the distraction mechanisms. Choose your battleground, maybe your daily routines, your phone settings, and mobilize your weapons.
Okay.
Discipline, radical focus. And recognizing this need for a battle plan leads us straight into his most concrete, practical advice, the how-to of this war.
Okay, so if the enemy is this constant breaching of our focus, the constant interruptions, Titus offers a solution, and it sounds pretty extreme.
It's definitely not a half measure. He called it notification batching.
Batching. Okay, but his version sounds intense.
It's the practical application of that Etoric samurai spirit we talked about. You identify the phone, or rather its notifications, as the primary tool of that Pavlovian conditioning.
The bell ringing constantly.
Exactly. And you treat it like a strategic enemy asset that needs to be neutralized, or at least strictly controlled.
So what's the specific method? Because the sources say it's not just, turning off Facebook alerts. It's more drastic.
It's uncompromising. Titus decided, after experimentation, that he would receive all external notifications, emails, texts, app alerts, everything, just once per day. Once. He set a specific time, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. So from the moment he wakes up until 7 p.m., nothing. Silence?
Digital silence, yes.
Ah.
For roughly 17 hours a day, his focus is completely walled off. No external digital stimulus can just pop in and derail his train of thought, interrupt deep work, or trigger that compulsive need to check the phone.
Wow, that takes serious commitment. What were the results he reported?
Pretty much exactly what you'd expect someone fighting this war would want. He talks about a profound sense of peace of mind returning.
Breaking the addiction cycle.
Yes, freedom from that constant urge to check. And crucially, a significantly enhanced ability to focus deeply.
And he wasn't just, meditating with this newfound focus. He channeled it.
Right into high-stakes activities that demand concentration. The sources mention trading, complex writing projects, even strategic poker playing.
Things you simply cannot do well if your brain is half waiting for the next notification ding.
Precisely. If a random social media update can shatter your concentration, you can't manage the mental load required for, say, effective market analysis or crafting a careful argument in writing.
So the time and mental energy saved by the 7 p.m. batching wasn't just free time. It was immediately reinvested.
Reinvested into building intellectual capital, financial capital, honing skills.
Okay, let's get into the psychology here. You mentioned Pavlovian conditioning. Why is this constant checking so hard for most people to resist? Can we break down that mechanism?
Absolutely. Titus really nails this. He identifies that uncontrolled alerts function based on a principle from behavioral science called a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement.
Variable ratio schedule. Okay, sounds technical, but that's the engine behind addiction, right? Like slot machines.
It's exactly like slot machines. It's arguably the single most powerful behavioral driver we know for creating addictive, compulsive habits.
How does it work? In simple terms.
It means the reward, the notification, the slot machine payout is unpredictable. It's random. You don't know when it's coming, but you know it will come eventually.
So sometimes the notification is important or interesting or pleasurable.
Right. A text from a friend, an important work email, a like that gives you a little dopamine hit.
But often, It's junk. An ad, a pointless update, something irrelevant.
Exactly. But because the potential for a reward is always there, and you can't predict when the good stuff will arrive, you're conditioned to keep checking, compulsively, pulling the lever on the slot machine or glancing at the phone screen.
Because the next check might be the one that delivers something good.
Precisely. That unpredictability maximizes anticipation. It minimizes your brain's ability to just relax and ignore it because the reward schedule is designed to keep you hooked.
So the phone is constantly ringing Pavlov's bell, but only sometimes is there actually food, metaphorically speaking.
Yes, and that constant state of low-grade anticipation, that waiting for the bell, it's exhausting. It creates chronic, low-level stress.
And it kills deep work.
It's the silent killer of focus. You can't be fully present in what you're doing if a part of your brain, that ancient alert part, is always listening for the potential reward signal.
So by the time you actually sit down to focus on a task,
A chunk of your cognitive bandwidth, your mental RAM, is already occupied just maintaining that state of alert, waiting.
that explains why just telling yourself focus harder often doesn't work. You're fighting biology.
You're fighting a deeply ingrained compulsion mechanism, reinforced potentially thousands of times a day. The only way to really break free, Titus argues, is to cut the signal.
Which is what the 7 p.m. batching does. It's like cutting the wire to the bell.
It's the necessary cold turkey, the shock therapy to break the conditioning loop.
And the sources emphasize that achieving this wasn't easy for him.
No, and this is a crucial detail. He apparently tested over 20 different apps just to find a reliable way to enforce this 7 p.m. rule across all his notifications.
20 apps. What does that tell us?
It tells us the system isn't designed to help you do this. The default is interruption. Regaining your agency requires significant effort, experimentation, going against the grain. If it were easy, everyone would have perfect focus.
And then there's the kicker. The final detail that really seals that war metaphor for me.
Yeah.
Where did he find the app that actually worked?
He had to source the final working application outside the official Google Play Store.
Outside the sanctioned channels.
Yes. That's almost the philosophical punchline, isn't it? The main marketplaces, the app stores, they're generally designed to facilitate engagement, data collection, the very variable ratio schedule he's fighting against. They represent the system's core territory.
So to find a tool that actively works against those design principles, to truly reclaim agency,
He had to go off-road, circumvent the official pathways. It highlights that resistance often means stepping outside the comfortable, approved, walled gardens. You have to actively seek out tools that prioritize your focus over the platform's engagement metrics.
but playing devil's advocate again. For someone with, say, a demanding job or caregiving responsibilities, is a strict 7 p.m. batching rule truly realistic? Don't some rules require faster responses? Isn't this just too radical for most people?
That's a very practical concern, and Titus would likely respond in a typically Stoic way. First, question the premise. If your job demands such constant, instant availability that you cannot carve out even, say, 8 hours of focus time, is that job truly aligned with your long-term well-being and goals? A hard question, but one he'd say needs asking.
Okay, fair. But sometimes you don't have a choice, at least in the short term.
Right, so if it's truly unavoidable, the principle would still apply. Identify the absolute critical communication lines, maybe calls from family, alerts from a specific work system, and allow only those through.
But everything else, the social media, the news alerts, the general email deluge, the group chats,
That still gets batched, strictly, to 7 p.m. or whatever single point works. You preserve the integrity of your focus for the vast majority of the noise. The radical approach is needed initially to break the powerful conditioning. Gradual changes often just slide back into compromise.
So establish the fortress first, then decide very carefully who gets allowed through the gate and when.
Exactly, because the ultimate goal isn't just saving a few minutes here and there, it's about preserving the very capacity for sustained, complex thought, which is under siege.
Let's zoom out a bit now. Titus doesn't just focus on the personal battle. He looks at the wider societal impact of this collective attention drain. There's a specific observation he makes.
Ah, the scene on the street, yes, it's quite poignant.
Can you describe it?
He talks about seeing 3 young men walking together down a street at night, physically close, shoulder to shoulder.
Okay, a normal scene.
But each one is completely absorbed in their own phone screen. Staring down, their faces illuminated only by the device's light. He describes them as being lit like ghosts in the night.
Lit like ghosts. That's chilling.
It really captures that feeling of isolation and proximity. They're together, but entirely separate, each in their own little digital bubble.
Disconnected from the shared reality of the street, the sounds, the air.
And crucially, disconnected from each other. The ghost metaphor implies they're physically present, but mentally, spiritually elsewhere, guided by some other manufactured reality beaming from the screen.
And he sees this specific instance as emblematic of a wider decay.
Yes, a decay in genuine human connection and presence, even when people are physically together. It's a symptom of the larger issue he's tackling.
And that larger issue for him is this idea of algorithmic enslavement.
He's very direct about this. He believes these devices and the algorithms driving them are fundamentally geared towards dominating human will, and they will succeed unless we actively fight back.
So he doesn't see technology as neutral, just a tool.
Not in its current configuration. He views the whole infrastructure, the platforms, the recommendation engines, the notification systems as a system of control, however subtly it operates.
And he contrasts what people should be doing
Which is trying to get free, trying to reclaim their autonomy,
with what they often actually do.
which is passively sinking deeper into dependency. He uses stark language, becoming slaves to algorithms, short videos, and distractions.
That phrase, slaves to short videos, really hits home in the current climate. TikTok, Reels, Shorts.
It perfectly captures it. It's not just about the content being potentially trivial, it's the mechanism. Continuous, rapid-fire, low cognitive load engagement. The algorithms are getting scarily good at delivering precisely the next little hit to keep you scrolling.
Bypassing any kind of deep processing, just pure consumption.
And when you train your brain day after day to consume information in 60-second or even 15-second bursts, what happens to your ability to engage deeply with complexity?
It must atrophy, like a muscle you never use.
Exactly. If you can't sustain focus on a single difficult topic for an hour, reading a challenging book, working through a complex problem, having a nuanced conversation, then how can you possibly engage in the kind of thinking needed for real freedom, for self-governance?
You can't strategically plan a life or understand complex ideas like Stoicism itself if your attention span is shattered.
So the enslavement isn't just about losing time, it's fundamentally cognitive. It degrades the very tools you need to resist.
And the ultimate result is losing self-direction. All your mental energy gets sucked away by these immediate, random digital rewards.
Leaving nothing in the tank for the harder, long-term projects that actually build a meaningful life. Which brings us back to that crucial distinction.
The tools serving goals versus goals serving tools.
Right. Are you using the technology, or is it, in a sense, using you?
And Titus offers himself, or his own reported behavior, as the positive example here. He's not a Luddite. He doesn't reject technology entirely.
No, he redeploys it strategically.
He apparently makes a point of saying his most used app isn't social media or news.
No, he proudly states it's his trading app.
Why is that significant?
Because it perfectly illustrates the principle. He's taken the focus, the time, the mental energy reclaimed by fighting notifications and deliberately channeled it into a tool that demands deep focus, analytical thinking, sustained engagement for a clear, defined goal.
Financial improvement, intellectual challenge.
Exactly. The tool is serving his higher objectives. It's not just passively consuming content or killing time or soothing anxiety.
It's the Etoric mindset applied directly to his phone usage.
Precisely. Technology itself is neutral, but our use of it defines our relationship to it. If your screen time report shows mostly apps for distraction, passive consumption, seeking validation, then arguably you're serving the tools.
But if your most used apps reflect learning, creation, discipline, focused work,
then you are the master. Titus ensures that the mental space created by his digital discipline doesn't become a vacuum. He immediately fills it with demanding, focused work. The samurai is always training, never idle.
So the takeaway for us, for you listening, is to take a hard, honest look at your own app usage, your screen time reports.
And ask that tough question. Is this app helping me grow? Or is it just helping me cope or hide or stay numb?
If it's the latter, then you're serving the algorithm, not your own highest goals. Okay, so we've got the overall framework, the war. We've got the practical tactic, notification batching. But Titus also provides, according to these sources, more concentrated fuel, guiding principles.
Yes, like mantras or maxims. Short, powerful sentences drawn from his writings that encapsulate the core philosophy.
Designed to be like instant armor against modern weakness.
That's a good way to think of it. They're meant to cut through the noise, the temptation, with immediate challenging clarity. Not just to be read once, but ideally memorized. Deployed mentally in moments of decision or weakness.
Like little self-correction commands.
Exactly. Rapid-fire reminders of the Etoric path.
Let's break down the first major one. It's a pretty fierce critique of modern pleasure-seeking culture, the danger of the crowd.
Yes, this quote really captures his anti-hedonism stance, he says. The
Okay.
crowd whose doctrine of pleasure aims only to corrupt the mind through flattery and distraction. It shuns effort, despises rigor, and would like to turn man into a sated animal never awake.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that. Corrupt the mind through flattery and distraction. What's the flattery part?
Think about it in the digital context. Constant validation, likes, tailored content that confirms your biases, echo chambers, algorithms designed to tell you you're right, you're smart, your taste is good.
Keep you feeling good about yourself so you keep consuming.
Exactly. And the distraction ensures you never pause long enough to critically question that flattery, or its source, or its effect on you.
So the corruption is turning your attention away from maybe harder truths or higher ideals.
Towards just feeling good right now, immediate gratification fueled by external validation and constant novelty.
Then he says this crowd shuns effort, despises rigor. Why are effort and rigor so important that avoiding them is seen as corrupting?
Because, in the Stoic view, effort and rigor are the only paths to genuine growth and virtue. You don't become courageous without facing fear that takes effort. You don't gain wisdom without deep study and contemplation that takes rigor.
So by shunning them, the crowd chooses the easy path, the path of least resistance.
Which is philosophically stagnant. You sacrifice your potential for growth, for resilience, just to stay comfortable.
And the end point of this path, according to Titus, is terrifying, turning humans into a sated animal never awake.
Right. What's a sated animal? It's comfortable, fed, docile, happy to just consume, rest, react.
It lacks foresight, agency, moral direction.
Completely. It's entirely reactive to its environment. Titus is warning that the ultimate trajectory of a culture obsessed with easy pleasure and distraction is to reduce us to that state. Intellectually and morally asleep, content in our passivity.
Which is the absolute opposite of the alert, focused, self-directed Etoric samurai.
Exactly. If you're never awake, you can't fight. You can't even recognize you're in a fight.
Okay, that definitely clarifies his rejection of passive pleasure. Now, the second big theme in these mantras seems to be the active embrace of difficulty.
Yes. Two key sentences here. First, resistance to luxury and comfort, which chain the soul by anesthetizing it.
And the second,
A difficult thing is not to be avoided, but embraced.
let's take the first one. Luxury and comfort aren't just nice. They actively chain the soul. They anesthetize it. What does the soul lose when it's numbed by comfort?
It loses its sensitivity, its toughness, its connection to raw reality. An anesthetic dulls pain, yes, but it also dulls vital signals, warnings.
So if you're constantly shielded from any discomfort, physical, mental, emotional,
You become psychologically fragile. You never develop the internal resources to cope with genuine hardship. When real adversity hits loss, failure, crisis, the anesthetized soul shatters because it has no calluses, no trained resilience.
comfort becomes a cage. A comfortable cage, but still a cage. Made of soft pillows, as you said earlier.
Exactly. So the second sentence follows logically. A difficult thing is not to be avoided, but embraced.
Why embraced? Not just tolerated, but actively embraced.
Because difficulty is the training ground. Choosing the hard path, the cold shower, the tough workout, the complex book, the notification batching, these are acts of intentional self-strengthening. You're exposing the soul to controlled stress, to rigor, making it stronger, more resilient, anti-fragile.
It's like the Stoic practice of voluntary hardship, but applied to our modern comforts and discomforts.
Precisely. The goal isn't self-care torture. It's proving to yourself through practice that your well-being comes from within, that you can handle discomfort, that you're not dependent on constant external ease and pleasure.
You're proving you're the diamond, not the fragile glass.
That's the essence of it, building that inner fortitude.
Okay. And the final theme in these guiding principles is maybe a bit more somber. It deals with personal responsibility, especially when you look around and see others maybe not fighting the same fight.
Yes, this one addresses the potential frustration or despair of seeing the crowd seemingly sinking into passivity. It's a call to focus your energy.
What's the line?
Your task is no longer to awaken men, but to avoid sinking with them.
Oof. That's stark. It sounds like a retreat.
It's a strategic retreat to the inner fortress. It advises against burning yourself out, trying to save others who may not want to be saved.
Stop proselytizing. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to drag everyone else along.
Focus your finite energy, your limited willpower, on your own integrity, your own resistance. Why? Because if the crowd is actively choosing the path of the sated animal, choosing comfort over rigor,
You probably can't force them awake.
and trying too hard might just pull you down with them. Your primary duty in this view becomes radical self-preservation. Ensure your flame doesn't go out.
It's not selfish then. It's strategic survival.
That seems to be the argument. If you maintain your own strength, your own clarity, your own discipline, maybe your example becomes a lighthouse. But if you sink while trying to rescue swimmers who are fighting you, everyone drowns. Save yourself first.
Which leads perfectly into the final mantra, the one about how to maintain that internal strength day to day.
Yes, the maintenance plan for the Aetoric samurai's inner fire.
Which is
Keep your fire burning. Feed it every day with study and discipline.
the fire being that inner awareness, agency, consciousness, the opposite of the ghost lit by the phone.
Exactly, but it's not self-sustaining. It needs fuel. Daily.
And the fuel is specifically named study and discipline.
2 essential ingredients. Study feeds the mind, philosophy, knowledge, context, understanding the battleground. Discipline is the action, the resistance, the training, the doing of the hard things, the refusal to give in to ease.
You need both, theory and practice,
Yeah.
every day.
Yes. Skip one, and the fire starts to dim. It reinforces that this war isn't a project with an end date. It's a continuous state of being, a daily commitment to fueling your own inner light. There's no final victory that lets you just relax forever. You feed the fire every single day.
We've covered the external battle, the notifications, we've covered the philosophical stance, war versus dance, and the daily fuel, study, and discipline. But Titus also points to an internal guide, right? Something deeper.
Yes, he brings in a classical Stoic concept, Cato's demon.
Cato the Younger, the Roman Stoic, known for his unwavering integrity.
That's the one. And the demon, which we should clarify, is not demon in the modern evil sense, refers to something like an individual's divine spark, or inner genius, or perhaps most accessibly, your conscience, your personal moral intuition.
Okay, the inner voice. How does Titus describe its function, especially in contrast to all the external noise we've been talking about?
He describes it as a discreet, subtle guide, but infallible. Crucially, its main function isn't to give detailed orders or complex strategies. Its primary role is to warn.
Warn, like an alarm bell.
Exactly. A quiet internal alarm. It's that immediate gut feeling, that sense of wrongness when you're about to deviate from your core principles or values, that inner check.
Why is it considered infallible, though? That sounds like a strong claim.
Infallible, perhaps, in the sense that it's rooted in your authentic self-knowledge. It's your conscience reacting based on your deeply held values. When you truly know what you stand for, that inner voice's warning about deviating from it feels fundamentally true, even if inconvenient.
And it operates best when?
In stillness, in quiet, it recognizes the deviation instantly without needing lengthy analysis. It's the voice that whispers, wait, this path feels wrong, even when the crowd or the algorithm or your desire for ease is shouting, go this way, it's easy, everyone's doing it.
Okay, the connection here is becoming really clear and maybe a bit alarming.
How so?
If the demon is this quiet, infallible warning system that needs stillness to be heard, and our modern digital lives are actively conditioning us with noise, high alert stress from variable ratio schedules, constant flattery, endless distraction, then how on earth are we supposed to hear that quiet voice?
That's the critical question, isn't it? The constant Pavlovian anticipation, the waiting for the next digital hit, it isn't just fragmenting our focus. It's polluting the silence needed for moral clarity.
If you're always agitated, always waiting for the external bell to ring,
You become deaf to the subtle internal warning of the demon. Discipline, like the 7 p.m. batching, isn't just about productivity. It's about creating the necessary quiet space to actually access your own intuition, your own moral guidance system.
so the battle for attention is also fundamentally a battle for the integrity of our conscience.
That's a powerful way to put it. The stakes are incredibly high. If we lose the ability to hear that inner guide,
Then we really are just puppets, marionettes acting out someone else's play with no internal compass to even tell us we're off course.
which makes cultivating that inner quiet, that ability to listen, perhaps the most important act of resistance.
Okay, this has been incredibly rich. Let's try to synthesize all this now, bring it together into some clear, actionable takeaways for you, the listener, if you want to try and implement this Etoric Samurai mindset.
Right. Let's boil it down.
Takeaway number 1 seems to be the foundational mindset shift. Reframe struggle.
Yes. Stop seeing difficulty, effort, and rigor as inherently negative things to be avoided at all costs. Titus demands we see them as necessary, even desirable, as proof we're engaged in something meaningful. Embrace the war metaphor. Recognize that resisting ease, comfort, and digital corruption is a conscious, daily, deliberate choice. If it feels hard, you might actually be on the right track.
Okay. Second, the big practical action. Radical time reclaim from tech.
Implement serious digital discipline. The 7 p.m. matching is his specific method, but the principle is key. Aggressively limit non-essential notifications. Break the Pavlovian cycle. Choose your tools deliberately. Be prepared to go against default settings or even leave the main app stores to find tools that serve your focus, not the platform's engagement. The system defaults to distraction. You must actively fight back.
Third, shifting how we use the tech we do allow. Designed for focus, not entertainment.
Yes. Audit your devices. Ruthlessly. Your most used apps, your screen time, do they reflect your highest goals? Learning, creating, building discipline, meaningful connection? Or do they reflect passive consumption, dopamine chasing, distraction? If it's the latter, you need to consciously redesign your digital environment. Make technology serve your goals, not the other way around. Trade cheap dopamine for earned discipline.
Fourth, the ongoing maintenance. Study and internalize Stoic sentences.
Feed your mind. Use Titus's mantras or find other powerful, concise, philosophical principles that resonate with you. Don't just read them, memorize them. Reflect on them daily, especially when facing temptation. Ask, is this comfort anesthetizing me? Am I avoiding effort? This regular reflection is the fuel for that inner fire. Keep it burning.
And finally, maybe the hardest one, the strategic focus. Prioritize self-preservation and focus.
Acknowledge the reality of the situation. Many people may be passively choosing distraction. Accept that you cannot force them to change. Focus your primary energy on maintaining your own integrity, your own focus, your own discipline. Avoid syncing with the crowd. Keep your own fire burning brightly through daily study and action. Your resilience and example might be the most powerful influence you have, more so than trying to argue everyone else into changing. #tag outro part.
Well, this deep dive into Titus's work, based on the sources you shared, has certainly given us a powerful, if demanding, field manual for navigating the modern world.
It really has. We've established this core idea that maintaining real agency today requires treating life more like a war, a necessary ongoing struggle against deliberately engineered distraction and the cultural forces pushing towards passive consumption.
Yeah, towards becoming that sated animal, never awake. We broke down the psychology behind why it's so hard, that variable ratio schedule keeping us hooked.
Which makes radical tactics like the 7 p.m. notification batching seem less like extremism and more like a necessary countermeasure, a first strike in reclaiming focus.
And we saw how rejecting easy comfort, embracing rigor, these aren't just about toughness, they're about fortifying the soul, building that stoic diamond.
Exactly. Preparing yourself for real challenges.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with. It connects that deep philosophical idea with the moral dimension. We talked about Cato's Daimon.
That quiet, infallible inner voice. The conscience. The warning signal that activates when we stray from our principles.
Right. Now consider this. If the very design of our digital environment is constantly conditioning us with random rewards, keeping us in a state of chronic stress, anticipation, and alert,
Bombarding us with noise and flattery.
what is the cumulative effect of that constant agitation, neurologically, spiritually, on our ability to actually perceive that quiet internal warning voice?
If the external world's volume is cranked to maximum all the time and the demon only whispers.
How long before we can't hear it anymore?
Yeah.
How long before we forget it's even there? Does the digital age, just through sheer noise pollution, sonic and psychological risk, drowning out conscience itself?
And if so, what deliberate acts of silence, what fierce protection of our inner quiet must we undertake today to ensure we can still hear that vital guide tomorrow?
That seems like the crucial territory for personal exploration.
Finding, or rather creating, that silence might be the first and maybe the most critical act of the modern Etoric samurai.
Thank you again for sharing these really thought-provoking sources with us. We hope this deep dive gives you some fuel for your own daily efforts.
Stay vigilant, keep your fire burning.
Welcome. I have a poker lesson that starts in 2 minutes. My poker lesson will be about poker, but before that we'll have a little discussion. We'll talk about one or two subjects, probably, because we always do that. I want to show you my philosophical work. My fourth book is A Stoic Samurai. Here's the French version. Here is the English version of my book, A Stoic Samurai. And my fifth book, here you have the German version. Here you have the English version, The Way of the Stoic Daimon. You also have the French version, the version I've written the book in. That was for the introduction to my books. Now I'm gonna jump into my call because he is probably already waiting. Good afternoon, Norman.
Hello, Titus. How are you?
How are you doing? I'm doing fine. Thanks.
Doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. I got your new book finally. Felt
Wow.
ready for it.
Ready? What a surprise. That's fast.
I tried to leave a review for your last book, but it didn't let me.
Oh.
So I'll try again with this one. Maybe I have to read quicker because
I don't think it's that. It's just some glitch. I don't think it has anything to do with when you want to review it. I don't, but maybe it does. I can ask ChatGPT if you want. It's kind of you, but in the big scheme of thing, it won't change anything. But I appreciate the effort you put into writing a review. That's very kind of you.
I'll try that again with this one. I got a Kindle version for this book. I already quite like it. I think easier for me than to copy passages and talk to you about them.
I think you can interact with the text. You can take easier notes on your PC. That's awesome. I also do that.
I started reading it and I quite liked the beginning already. I already took a lot of notes actually. Really good start to the book, I would say. I find it very motivating. Somehow I get this image of like an army going into battle, then you would be giving them the speech, rise their spirits. If I read out, I copied a lot of stuff already, but if I read out some stuff I like, then for example, resistance to luxury, I'm not going to read out the whole passages or even the paragraphs. I'm just going to read out the few sentences I liked from a passage or a paragraph. But I did copy usually the whole paragraph. It's just that I'd like to read out some of the sentences of those paragraphs I really like.
Sure. Can I just interrupt for 1 second, then I will listen to you without interrupting you. I wanted to say one thing because I will forget. I find it quite interesting. Since you talked about the metaphor of battle, that I'm writing a discourse to entice people to have courage and face the enemies. Not exactly what you said, but that was the idea. I wanted to say something. It's that Seneca says life is war. Now, I've listened not long ago to somebody, just one phrase resonated with me. He said, life is a dance. He takes a different point of view. I don't think you can say anything and everything has the same value. Because if you consider that life is a dance, then you consider that you are playing an act, that you are putting on a performance, that somehow you are a marionette. It's a puppet. And the thing is, if you consider that life is a dance, then you consider that you're putting on an act and actually that you're just a puppet playing your role. But I think it's harder than that. I think you have to fight a lot against a lot of things. It might seem only minor things and without any importance, but they have a huge impact on your life and your future. What comes to mind, since you asked how I'm great, but because I've gained back some control over my life. The thing I was battling with a lot is notifications. I tried a lot of things. The thing is, there's not just one simple solution because I need some notification with trading, but all the other notification I don't want. Finally, I've established some peace by batching my notification. All my notification will only show up at 7 p.m. every evening. And the rest of the time, I won't see all the notifications I don't want to see. At 7 p.m., I see all the notifications, all my WhatsApp messages and all the rest. Then I leave myself 1 hour to answer those notifications. That gives me back some control because if you do not do that, then you are like a dog. He's trained that when a bell rings, that there's food. The dog always thinks about that. And it's especially bad if sometimes there is food and sometimes there's no food. And with notifications, it's the same. A lot are just crap, but sometimes they're important. And the thing is, by batching them, receiving them all at the same moment every day, I have peace because I know that nobody will interrupt my workflow until then. It's awesome. I can concentrate much more on everything I do, writing, trading. Even I think it will improve my performance in poker. I've just managed to batch notifications yesterday, and I've received them for the first time at 7 p.m. This evening, I will receive the notification since then. For me, it's awesome because I've established some peace of mind. I feel like if I gain back some control, if I leave myself 1 hour a day to go through my notification, I think that's a lot of time already. If you add it up after 1 year, I don't want to lose too much time. One awesome thing I've discovered, because I had to test a lot of apps, like more than 20 to make it work. I'm working on notifications for a long time to get peace around them. It seems to work as I want it to work. It makes my life much more peaceful. I feel like I have much more time for everything I want. It's a fight. Even with notification, you have to fight. People are really addicted to their phones. Last time I went for a walk because I had to pick something up in town. It was already dark. I've crossed a couple of young guys like 18, 20, 16 years old, not very old, at the end of their adolescence. And it was dark. There were 3 friends working in the streets, but everyone had in front of their face a phone. And the phone lights the face up like a torch. And it was really disturbing just to see that. Even though they're friends, they work together, everyone is in his own bubble in front of his screen. They interact very little with each other, if not just to say 1 or 2 banalities, but they are mainly focused on what happens on the screen. I think it's a fight. If you want some freedom, you have to take drastic decisions, go through a lot of pain because they won't make it easy. The app that allows me to batch notification, which you can do once, twice, or 3 times a day, as much you want, but the app that allows me to do that, they took it off the Google Play Store. I had to find it from another store and install it. Without that, it would be much harder to manage my notifications. The one that I use is free. When it works, it's awesome. But the thing is, you have to go through a lot of trials. I feel like I only learned how to use a phone during the last 6 months. It's really painful, but you must realize that you can really mess up somebody by giving them little clues, like something vibrating or a bell going off, because we will act like a dog who is trained to look for food when he hears a bell. That will be always on our mind, and it will create stress and anxiety. I've done some research on phones, and I've published a video about that. It's horrible what it does to the human mind. If you don't fight against it, make it behave as you wish, then you slavery. People should try to get free, but instead of being free, they become slaves to algorithms, short videos, and so on. They waste a lot of time during their life with stuff that is pointless. But the really good thing, I think I told you, is that the app that I use the most, you know which one it is? Norman, can you guess? Do you want to guess?
I'm thinking, I don't have a good guess what come to mind, like an app related to trading. Okay, I'll go with a wild guess. I'll guess Pomodoro. You know what that is.
I have it on my phone. You said the answer, but Pomodoro wasn't it. The answer was my trading app. They are on top. The most time I spent on them, those are the apps I open the most. I'm happy with that because that shows that I focus on what matters. Don't spend too much time with a distraction, TikTok or anything else. I never do. I'm already way ahead of a lot of people, but I think it can still improve. Now with the final changes that I have and batching notifications, I think it will be much better. All the freedom that I gain, since I will be less addicted, less sidetracked by my phone, all the freedom that I get from that, I can put it into stuff that have more value for me. When I'm with people, I want to be present. I want to listen to them, not just think about my phone if I did get an important notification. No, I know that I will only get the notifications at 7 p.m. For me, that's awesome. If you want to, we cannot go through the passages, the 1 or 2 passages of my book. If you have any reply on that, on life being a dance or life is war, what you think is more accurate, then let me know.
Animals come to mind. Usually dancing, I think they do in mating or courtship, for example, birds, or they do displays of essentially ability. It's like a test in a way. Then there's dancing with a partner, which humans evolved or do, but I think it's still similar. It's to do with interacting with the other person, showing your proficiency in listening to the music and moving your body. All these things show health and wisdom. I don't see it's similar from war in a way. I would say that's like there's this and the competition, all these things during war and the more primitive wars, early ancestors. I think there was like war dances or rituals, some displays of trying to put fear on the opponent through some singing or dancing on a battlefield, hopefully not having to go to battle. I did bring this comparison that you would be somewhat uplifting people on a battlefield. It's just an image that came to my mind. It's not like you necessarily are motivating in a very violent or destructive way that I had this. It's just for my imagination connected with that image at that moment. You could motivate in a different setting. I didn't put so much meaning or thought behind that. I guess in general that I find it quite motivating. And I do think there's some warlike element, at least in the stuff I've read so far, which I guess overall you could say being independent or resisting the system is threatening just as it is to others in a way. I think you're right about that quite a lot, how a system actually. I was to read out sentences of the paragraphs I like my favorite paragraph's favorite sentence, just to clarify. But for example, sentence, the crowd whose doctrine of pleasure aims only to corrupt the mind through flattery and distraction. It shuns effort, despises rigor, and would like to turn man into a sated animal, never awake.
I like that sentence. Thank you, Norman. I think it's quite beautiful and well written. Thank you.
I'll read out the other ones. Like I said, I copied more, but I'm reading out just my favorite parts in the shortest form of that. Resistance to luxury and comfort, which chain the soul by anesthesia. I know what anesthesia is, but as a verb, I'm not sure how to pronounce that verb of anesthesia. What else have I here?
That's all, Norman. I understand. I've written it. It's a translation. I'm not sure I can say it correctly. This translation, I perfectly get it. Can you read it again once more? Just say anesthesia or whatever is the easiest for you. Doesn't have to be correct grammatically or logically. It's just because you talk much about that term that I did forget the context.
I get it. Resistance to luxury and comfort, which chain the soul by anesthetizing it. Work is hard, so what? A difficult thing is not to be avoided but embraced. What is hard is made for man, for it is in effort that he proves himself. But the wise man does not lament what the world is not yet. He acts in the moment with the tools he has at hand, without dreaming of what he lacks. I write to exist, so as not to be ashamed of having seen the light, to give meaning to my life. I listen to nature and attune myself to it, living in harmony with the cosmos. Every step reminds me that my body and mind are not made for rest, but for effort. Your task now is no longer to awaken men, but to avoid sinking with them. Keep your fire burning. Feed it every day with study, discipline. And then when you were talking about Daimon, there's this part where Crates spoke of it as an inner voice, discreet but infallible, not to command, but to warn. It did not tell him what to do, but what not to do. I like that soft element of this. I think of that as gentle guidance instead of saying forcefully, do this, do that. More, I would not do that, or this should be avoided for these reasons, so on.
Awesome, Norman. But it makes me think about your wisdom, actually, because you told me in one of our lessons that the first thing you try to do every day is to make stuff not worse. That to me resonates with the idea you just explained to me of the inner voice that tells you not what to do, but at least what to avoid, at least what not to do. The wisdom is all around us. It is not something totally new. Actually, I don't think it is new. I think it hasn't changed since antiquity. Just we have been corrupted system that did put in us values that aren't real values. They installed in us virtues that aren't actually real virtues. They are virtues that our system wants us to have because it is convenient for the people on top, our dear elected leader, but they never were true real virtues because just being an obedient slave, that's not something nature wants from you. Nature has given you a head, a brain, a capacity to do all the stuff you have to do in your life on your own. You actually need very little other people. As soon as you can have access to the basic things, you can manage to do a lot on your own. And the virtues they teach us in school and everywhere else are all wrong. They won't fulfill you. They won't create anything lasting, anything beautiful, or anything interesting. They will just make you easily manageable. It's very hard. My piano teacher, last time I talked with her, she watched the same video from the Buddhist and gave me her reply. And the thing she liked the most is that he talked about community and people and being engaged with them. She liked all that. But that's the easy way out. Everybody likes a friendship. But to really have a friend, really spend time with him, it's a hard thing. For her, there's a lot of things I want to tell her because she might be in Switzerland only for 3 years. She thinks that in 3 years she has to leave because a lot of people have to leave. They don't get any permit to stay. But I don't think that's the case. I think she has 80% chance to stay if she plays her card correctly. I think she can manage on her own or she can find somebody and she can put a cross on a piece of paper. She can stay. I think it's very easy for her to stay. But in order to explain that to her in detail, why it would be interesting, I need time to spend and with her because I cannot tell her that in 5 minutes or make her understand that in 5 minutes. If she tells me I have no time to talk to you, a lesson is only 60 minutes and then it's over. There's a lot of things I cannot tell. If she wants to act like a robot zombie NPC, for me it's all fine because she's a great teacher. But then everything else I would like to tell her, everything else that could be helpful for her, then we have no time for that. Because I cannot spend 45 minutes of my piano lesson talking about life, philosophy. If the piano lesson is only 60 minutes, I need at least 60 minutes to practice, try and play. It's easy to say, I like friendship, I like community. But then when you are in front of somebody who is generously offering you time and friendship, you tell him, I have no time for that. I'm really stressed. Everybody's stressed. I was really stressed until I managed to patch my notifications. But the thing is, you have to see that there are priorities in life. You should not always be stressed for stuff that is not important and has no consequence on your future. But for her, staying in Switzerland or going somewhere else, that could have an influence on her future. Not everything is indifferent. It's really hard because you are great. You take the time, you are intelligent, you try to understand, you are just awesome, Norman. But not everybody is like you. A lot of people are hard to deal with. Any remarks on that?
I'm just thinking of what your book would say. I think it would say something like, it's true and it's difficult. Life is difficult without people. It's even more difficult maybe with people. And I'm sure for other people, it's difficult to deal with me, like it is difficult for me to deal with them. There are certainly things other people know or notice I don't know or notice. So sometimes I might find something very irritating about another person, whereas I might not just understand the reasons for it. Or possibly there's similar things they're dealing with me. I certainly share your sentiment that it's extremely tiring even sometimes to deal with people. I'm thinking of teaching poker the past few years, which changed a lot in my life, that I suddenly interact with way more people I used to, and people who are quite different in all sorts of ways. Certainly sometimes I feel like that it's extremely tough, but I think what your book would say is something like, it should be embraced that it's difficult. There can be glory in it as well, to do your best effort regardless. And that's what your book teaches every day, to give the best, to put the best effort. The same I feel like with communicating with people, to really try to give your best effort. And you can't do really more, just like you can't work more than 24 hours a day. It's not possible because there's no more hours. And if you really think about sleep and other stuff, then that would even be less than that, but that's fine. You just do how much you can do. I think the same with communications. I try to move more towards that way, to just let them be as they are. A lot of relationships are nothing like I would want them to be. I would rather want to spend more time with some people and to get to know them better. And with some people, I would wish to have a mutual understanding where I don't really have that. It's difficult to be understood by them, for me to understand them. If you're in an interaction with a person, to do your best effort, I think, and then let it be and accept it as it is. I think that's a big part, just to accept it, that it's not always going to be ideal, because really the ideal could be different for different people. If someone's very hungry, their ideal could be to eat something. But if you're in a different mood, your ideal at that moment would be to do something else. It's always, I think it is worth it to struggle with it, even as hard as it is. I think it does bring value to life. I guess it could even be worse. There's a lot to cherish about communications we do have. If you think about the animal kingdom, they can really convey mostly just their emotions by making a growling noise or somehow showing that they're happy, but they can't really express much else other than their emotion. And I feel like with humans, often we struggle with sharing our emotions to each other, to other people. But the beautiful thing is we are able to share ideas, a lot of things which animals wouldn't be. If we were an animal without able to speak, you could experience something very meaningful. You'd want to share that to the other animals, but you would not be able to do so. You could only share that emotion. It's difficult, but hopefully worthwhile. What do you think?
I think you're getting philosophical. I like what you said. You said life is difficult without people, and it's even more difficult with them. I like that. I do the same that you do. I tell you what I like in your discourse. There's a lot more interesting stuff you said, but I'm not going to go in detail with all of it. But still, thank you for sharing it. Unless you want me to focus on one thing you said. But I have something else that I would bring to the table. You told me that one of the reasons why you teach poker is because you want to prevent your clients from being degenerate gamblers. You said something like this once. You don't remember because it was a long time ago, but you said something like this. Actually, I try to do the same with my clients up to a certain extent. Most of them aren't degenerate gamblers to start with. But I've heard about somebody, and it's quite striking what happened to him. He was an Ukrainian. He managed somehow to make 30 millions in the markets. 30 millions. And last week, Bitcoin dropped a little. Because of that, his position did get liquidated. He ended up broke, like everybody else. Now, he didn't like that. He went into his Bugatti, a very nice car, 250K. He pulled the trigger. He put a bullet in his head. I don't want to say it's sad. He played it as he wanted to play it. I don't think there's anything sad or that he even made the wrong decision. He probably didn't have 30 minutes for a long time. He had maybe 30 millions for 6 months or 2 or 3 years, but I don't think he was rich. He knew what it is to be broke. He knew what it is to have some money. For a lot of people, a lot of money. He saw that now that he has lost it all, there's no chance of making it back, that he will be broke like everybody else, and that he can do DoorDash or Uber Eats or any crap that nobody wants to do. Even if you do it, you cannot pay your rent with it. So he decided, let's stop it. I'm not discussing his decision to put an end to his life. That's up to him. Everybody can decide on his own what he thinks is appropriate, when he thinks it is appropriate. But what I think is sad is that he didn't talk with me before he took his leverage position on Bitcoin, before he exposed his entire capital to the market. Because I've met one of my clients last week. I explained to her that there are a lot of dangers on Bitcoin now. I expect it to drop. Showed the reason why I expect it to drop. I also said that the drop is not enough for me to be convinced that the bull market is over. It should extend at least to next month, maybe even more. I exposed her the reasons why there is danger. I exposed her also the reason why there is a chance that even with the danger, the bull market is not over. For a lot of people to have two conflicting ideas in the brain, that's quite hard. But in reality, it's not so hard. But the thing you should have never been in is in that position. You should never have risked your entire capital on one trade. I know that 30 million is nice, but when you have 30 million, you realize that it's not enough. And you want 60, 90, 150. And he thought he could turn his 30 millions into probably 150. And he wants to do that very fast, in 6 months or 1 year. The thing is, if you expose yourself to so much risk, that's madness. I would have told him, look, even if you're the best trader humanity has ever seen, you have 9 winning trades out of 10. That still means that if you do that, that when the 10th trade comes, you lose everything. You can never do that. You can never do that in the markets. What I find sad is that, and also, I don't think he was a technical guy. I don't think he knew a lot about the markets. I don't know how he got lucky. He made his 30 millions, but I don't think he knew a lot. If I asked him, why do you take that position? Why do you put your liquidity point there? I don't think he can really explain it or say something that makes a lot of sense, because it doesn't make any sense to do that. He probably knew very little about trading, and he took immense risk. Then, not just did he lose his 30 millions, but he thought that without his 30 millions, life isn't worth living. He put an end to his life. It's quite sad. Ukrainians have it hard now. Did you hear about the girl that was killed in America by somebody from Black Lives Matter, a guy of color? She was sitting in a bus. She sat in front of that guy from Black Lives Matter. How do you say it to be polite? Can you say black, or is that racist? What do I have to say? I think you can say black. She sat in front of him. He looked at her, and then he took out a knife. Everything is on camera. Then he stood up. He stabbed her to death. Then there was blood all over. He just left the metro. He did it because he didn't like white people. Ukrainians have it hard. She wasn't Ukrainian. She left Ukraine to flee the war and the bombs. I don't know if it was New York or another town, but then she's in an American city in the metro. She ends up sitting in front of the wrong guy, and the guy stabs her to death. It's quite hard what they go through. I don't know what karma they have, to talk like the Buddhist guy I listen to, but they have it quite hard now. One of them loses 30 millions and puts the end to his life, then the other one gets stabbed to death for no reason. She was on her phone. Funny, huh? She was on her phone writing a message when he stood up and stabbed her to death. I'm not good at poker, but at least I make the effort to talk with a poker teacher. I don't understand why so many people in the markets think they have figured it all out and never consult anybody. For me, that makes no sense. They do it with a lot of money, more money than most people put on the poker table. To me, it makes no sense.
Somehow what comes to mind is easy come, easy go. That if someone gets rich quickly, they probably took a lot of risks and were a bit lucky, but it's likely that it will disappear quite soon.
Awesome, Norman. Thanks a lot for the passages you have read to me. Feel free to do that whenever you feel like it. I really enjoy listening to you, seeing what resonated with you, what you liked. If you have nothing else in mind, we can do some poker before our lesson is over.
Let's start with something a bit different I have prepared for you here. This is a pre-flop range. This is for under the gun open on an 8-player table.
Under the gun 1 or 2? For me, under the gun 1 is the first one, under the gun 2 is the second one. I just wanted to clarify that. Awesome. Okay, we have under the gun. Go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you.
I guess I'll put you under the gun +1. It does not change too much, but okay. Scenario is that your opening range from that position is probably somewhat similar to this one. What I'd like to take a moment to look at.
It's a little wider, because I would play 5-4 suited. I would play 4-4, sometimes even 3-3, but very little. They are not 100%. It's a little wider, but it's more or less the same. It's very close.
Okay. What I'd like to take a moment here is to really develop some understanding more about the pre-flop ranges, to do with the fact that what I talked about, I think last time in this month, I believe, I was talking about how I would like you to start playing without pre-flop ranges. A little bit of an explanation why I think it's not so important to play with pre-flop ranges exactly, essentially. If we look at this model, as complicated as it is, it's recommending quite a binary decision. You either raise or you fold. Now, actually, as a human being, you have more options. What other options would you actually have? Not that you ever take those options, but it's still good to be aware of what are the other possible options.
I could limp. I don't see any other option than that because we already have a raise. I don't think there's anything else.
Let's say the specific option is raise to 2 big blinds. If it's not just a raise, but raise to 2 big blinds, then the other options would be to raise to different amounts.
Raise more.
Exactly.
I cannot raise less than 2 big blinds, but I could.
That is correct. I think it's good to remember that freedom. Even though these systems are good, they're there to support us. We don't want to lose our agency in that way. Sometimes in life, there could be a scenario where something strange becomes the logical thing to do. It could be one day you're in a tournament. It could make sense to limp for whatever reason or to raise larger. It's good to have some openness to all the possibilities. Even if we're mostly going to dismiss them, we still should not forget them, and they're possibly good moves in certain scenarios. The same goes with the overall pre-flop range, that we should not be fixed on what it recommends us to not play and the hands that it recommends us to play. And for that, I'm going to click on the expected value of hand here, which added is small numbers at the bottom corner of every hand here, which is the expected value in machine size of this action, raising to 2 for the red hands. For the blue hands, it's zeros here because folding is free, I like to say often. If we look at your hand 5-4 suited, this program gives the raise to slightly worse than folding, but it's extremely close. If I'm not mistaken, this is within the error rate of the program. The program doesn't have 100% confidence in all its output. Why? In your range, it might be a little bit different, and this is included because a little bit of a different program, the output could be a little bit different. It's a very marginal difference. Now, this expected value is in big blinds. So if you start the hand with 40 big blinds, this is 0.02. One big blind would be 50 times more. If you play this hand, the machine here would think that over 50 times of playing that, you would lose one big blind. Whereas if you folded, you would not lose that. It's a negligible difference here. But if we just look at a chart like this, the colors are opposite ends. It's like black or white or blue or red here. Sometimes it seems like Jews and Muslims are blue and red, black and white. If you ever have seen a Jewish man or a Muslim man, they have some physical similarities to them. If you ever looked at the language they speak or how they write it, there's a lot of similarities in that. If you look at the religion they're following, they're both Abrahamic religions, both Judaism and Islam. There's a ton of ness in it. But somehow through media or politics, sometimes it seems like black and white, like you have to choose a side, whereas it's not clear to me that the sides are so different. That's the same thing here with the pre-flop range, that if someone plays that 5-4 suited or not, there really isn't much of a difference in terms of a side here. As we explore deeper into these numbers, if we look at something like ace-8 suited under the gun, which is quite a powerful hand, even its raise is expected to win 0.04 big blind. Why is that so low? You're under the gun. You have 7 opponents. All of them could call or raise. And you have an suited ace, okay, but they have 7 hands. They have 14 cards. How strong should the ace-8 suited be? It's within the error rate, based on my understanding. Really, even if someone folded ace-8 suited, based on the circumstances. Now, that's really where I'm going with all this talk here, to bring some circumstantial ability to your poker game. I think the prerequisite of that is to recognize how close different decisions are. If we now look at the best possible hand, pocket aces, that's expected to win 2.29 big blinds, which doesn't seem too much. It's just pretty much the antes and small blind and big blind, and that's about it. Why isn't it more? Opponents play correctly, they might just fold. They might not lose a big pot unless they have a good hand. They might not go all in or re-raise you. And sometimes their weaker hand beats aces. In poker, they could sometimes win with different hands, but this is still pretty good win rate. In this case, it could even be more if the opponents were more willing to engage with us. The distinction with fold is clear. 2 big blinds or more than 2 big blinds in one hand. That's a clear distinction here, which mentally should make it that if you're ever deliberating between raising and folding, it's very tough to see why you would fold a hand if the difference is so large. If we look at, again, the 5-4 suited here, then it's more than the difference between these two numbers of folding and raising. For aces, is 100 times bigger, greater difference. For 5-4 suited to raise or fold is 100 times closer decision than it is for aces, or even more so. But what is, on the other hand, close decision for aces is, should we just raise it or should we just go all in? Why invest just 2 chips if we could invest all the chips and then put the decision on the opponent's end? Who knows, they might not fold. They should fold quite often. That's why the value here isn't too large. But even if they call 1 time in 10, you would immediately be playing for an enormous pot. Whereas with these small pots, you give them a chance, you win a lot of small pots. Possibly, why not go for the big victory? There is a difference here. I think it's considerable here, the 0.07 big blinds, but it's still in the digits, really. It's all quite negligible differences. But what is, I think, important here is, as a player, you really should be weighing some option. With the option under the gun is, should you raise to 2 big blinds or should you raise 2 more? You could make arguments for all of these moves. For example, what could be an argument to raising bigger or going all in over just raising 2 big blinds? Could you make an argument of a table situation that would want you to go for a bigger raise than the standard?
I think it's easy. It's when people don't respect your raise, you still get a lot of callers. That puts you in a not so good situation. You would like to face something reasonable, 1 or 2 callers, but not 4 or 5. In that case, it's much better to raise more. There's one more thing I want to ask since after I to talk now. The thing is, can I consider that 2.29 is like having a 2.29% of chance of making money? Can I make that shortcut or would that be entirely wrong?
These are not connected. That would be interesting to know how often your hand would win. Essentially, this is the expected victory in big blinds on average. That's what that is. That is the return of investment, ROI.
But the thing is, the return on investment in trading is calculated as a percentage.
Well, then you could say you're investing 2 chips and that you would essentially get your 2 chips back, then also win this as an extra. So that would be something like 130% ROI or something like that, I guess. No one's really asked that. That's quite interesting, yes. It's just in poker players' terms. It's how many more chips would you have at the end of the hand from the start of the hand. Here we start the hand with 40 big blinds and we would end the hand average with aces with 42.29 big.
But then it's easy to make the percentage, is it not?
No, I didn't say it was difficult, I guess. It's just not displayed here.
Okay, but if we make the percentage, because I'm interested in that, you're better in math, you can tell me. I would need to use my...
It's 5% more from 40 to 42.
It's 5.725. That would it be. That has nearly 6% chance of making money.
No, when
No,
you say like that,
yeah,
it's like 54%, it doesn't make one.
That's wrong. I said it wrong. It's a hand that if you play it long enough, you will make 6% on average.
It's like S&P and something like that. US stock exchange, how
Yeah,
much it makes.
you can compare to that. A good comparison. But that means that every other hand makes you less than the S&P. Now, if we look how much chance we have with 5-5 to make money, it would be much less. Can we see again the percentage? Because I want to make
It's actually 0 here.
5-4. It's 0. Then why do we play it? No, it's negative. You're changing it. Now it's 5-5. Look at fives. 0. Why do we play it if it's 0?
We wouldn't play it. This is a theory question. In terms of practice, you don't have to play it. I was not quite ending on this small lecture what I was like the conclusions. I was kind of building up to it, noticing.
Okay, then come with the conclusion later. But could I just see 6-6? Because I want to compare it. Or ace-3, something positive, but very low. This is 0.02. So now let's do it again. 40 big blinds divided by 100 and 0.02 divided by that. This is a hand that makes money 0.05%. I say it wrong again. How do I have to say it? The return on your investment ROI will be 0.05. That's how I see it. I actually don't see the big blinds, the amount of big blinds as an ROI. But if I calculate it like this, then I would have an return on investment.
Fine.
Then we see how much we can make with it.
Obviously, the key thing here is a poker hand takes 1 minute, if that. It takes 30 seconds to 1 minute. Even a small return, it's one thing to have a 7% return on a year. In poker with aces, you can have a 7% return in 30 seconds. That's the thing, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge amount for it to make a difference. I will get to my conclusions. I will answer the question. In theory, why we would play the fives is it will add value to all the other hands. Now, do you have a guess? How could playing fives add value to all the other hands?
Yes, it adds value because if I play 5, then I show him sometimes weak hands and that will entice him to play more. But if I am more select, more tight, then he might not engage as much with me. I have to play some crappy hands, just not to show him that I always have the best hand.
Exactly. Now, poker theory is built upon the preposition that your opponent knows your strategy, knows the perfect counters to every move you do. That's why in theoretical terms, it would be sometimes played. It's still mostly folded, but it would sometimes be played just to be more aggressive, just to essentially make it so that when you do have a good hand, now gain a little bit more, as the opponent might not believe you as often. If someone only played aces, every other hand they would fold, then if your opponent in theory knew your strategy and knew a perfect response to it, then the opponent's strategy would be very easy. Every time you play, they should fold. Then your aces win still. You still would win the blinds. The trouble would be that there's other hands where you're big blind, small blind. The ante long term, that wouldn't be a successful strategy. Now, key thing here is this is theory. In practical terms, you are not forced to play any hand, even if your range says to play. Just like you answered previously on ace-8 suited, you answered on aces, I think. I asked you on aces why you would want to raise larger. You did give the good reply, which is that if your opponents are loose, you did focus mostly on the fact of folding people out, which actually isn't, I would say, the main goal. It is part of it, but the main goal really is your aces is a favorite against all the hands. So it has an ROI against all the hands. So the more you invest with aces, the more ROI you get. If you invest all your chips, then you possibly would get more ROI. Now, in theory, it doesn't look that way, because if you invest all your chips, in theory, the opponent will know you have aces and just fold. But in practice, things are often quite different in practice. In practice, your opponents don't know your strategy. They don't know the perfect counter moves to every move. You see, it could start to make sense if you think your opponents are just gambling and drunk, to not try to be theory oriented, but to have practical the implications. Just like if you're a bar or a club owner, you could have a theory about selling and buying and the price of alcohol, or you could just realize that you can pretty much, I'm trying to make like a silly example of economics here, and why the bar prices for alcohol is much greater than in shops or things like that. I'm trying to show this way to be free from theory, to know theory, to use theory, but not to be tied to theory that it starts to harm you. That is the thing that I'm really, in a conclusive way, trying to teach you here, is that theory could be harmful. Theory could say a lot of things, but if you have practical knowledge about how people are or what's going on, then it could be a good idea to do something that practically works, to be pragmatic in that way. Now I have another question. Why would you not want to raise any bigger with aces? Why actually the machine prefers here with aces to raise it the minimum amount? You previously made the case for a bigger raise. Could you make a case for raising it the smaller amount?
It's a very good hand. If everybody folds, that's not nice. I won't make that much, but you said it isn't a lot more than the big blinds. Is it here a lot more than the big blinds and the antes?
It's actually less here. I believe the total pot is 2.63. It's actually less than the blinds and antes.
Then it's hard to answer the question, because in that case, to me, it sounds like if I get unfold for everybody, I make more money than if they engage and I have to play their hand. It's very hard for me to answer that question. I don't know, Norman.
The thing is, we're looking at a very specific situation here. You have to be aware of the fact that if we looked at, we were dealer button or someone else raised, these things could be different. For example, let's say the first player under the gun one does raise, and we're the next player. Look at our value with aces now. Has it changed?
It has improved a lot, considerably, not a lot, noticeably.
No, more than 50% more. It was 2.2 something, 2.28, I think. Now it's 3.28. That's a considerable or noticeable change. And we have a player raising, we have an opponent here. Actually, it's not preferred that everyone folds. It is actually good for us here that there are people interested here. If someone went all in, this number would even go to more than that. Aces is a hand that does want action. A lot of the value comes from action. And if we put more re-raises here, these numbers would just keep on going up and up. Could we go under the gun just goes all in? If the first player goes all in, look at the value with aces now. Again, increase. They're all in. This number, they're all in. Pots 42 big blinds. It's expecting the expected value of aces to be 7 big blinds. I might have to ask them about this. This does not make sense to me.
Why does not make sense?
Because the total pot's 42 big blinds.
But you don't win it all the time.
But we have aces, we're gonna win it a large amount of time.
But I think you lose it a lot of time. That's why you only make 7.15. I don't see why you think it's not correct. What do you think should be the number for a call instead of 7.15? What do you think should be the number?
I think the issue with this is it does not assume the under the gun goes all in. I'm sorry, we shouldn't have looked at that.
Doesn't matter. Then let's just jump it. I have one small idea. We talk about how much money we can make. You explained how awesome it is because it doesn't take a long time and you have 6% of chance of winning money. That's awesome. I cannot refute that. But all that, according to me, is on the basis that you are better than your opponents. If we take two machines playing against each other and they have the same level and they play the same strategy, what would happen? According to me, they both lose money. How much? The rake. They don't make money from each other, but over the long time, they will lose all the money they play. The only guy who wins then is the casino. They always make money, but both of them would be losing players. Even though they have the same level, they play exactly the same hand, they are just as good. Their expected value is the same. The thing is, it only works as long as you're sitting against people who play less good or makes mistakes that you won't do. But the moment you face better opponents than you only lose. over the long run.
That's the nature of every competition. And the beauty of poker is it's very tough to have equality in it because it's such a complicated game. But certainly that's the laws of nature. Every tree has to struggle for sunlight, for their place in the dirt to grow and spread their roots. I don't disagree with what you said. That is true. The game's complicated enough that there's room to be better or to be worse. That's what I wanted to highlight. That people don't all play the same. I'm sure you've noticed that. And the thing previously was that Evie, you asked what should be. It would depend on the other player what they are all in with. If they're all in with aces as well, then it should even be less than this. If the only hand they're also all in is aces. But if they're all in with a bunch of hands, I think the EV there should have been at least like 20 or more than that, than the 7 it was displayed there. But the thing is, it was a rarely used line, as the program here never goes all in just like that. That's why the aces was so low. If I had taken a more common line for an all-in situation, let's say, I'll set it up for an all-in scenario here. Let's say the button raises. Let's do small blind goes all in. The button has the aces here. Wow, it's still 6-4-3. That is shocking to me. This is what small blind goes all in with. Aces is at least 80% favorite against this one. This is quite annoying, but I guess it just shows how just like people are not perfect, every machine people create is also imperfect, because it just does not make sense here. If small blinds all in, put 39 big blinds. Wait a minute, maybe I'm being dumb. We will have to call the all in here. We would have to call 33 chips. Plot will be 70, 72. Let's say we did win it 80%. I could do it in head. 60. Still too low. It still would be too low. 60. It's still too low. It would have to be at least somewhere around 20 here. This expected value is puzzling to me, really. I haven't noticed these things being wrong previously.
I can say if it's wrong, it's just a bug. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Let's conclude this with my general points here. So if we look at all back in the under the gun one opening range, a few more questions for you. You get dealt ace queen offsuit. Do you play that under the gun one?
Yes, I do.
You did look at your range. Was there any doubt about playing this?
No, I just wanted to see how good it is. There's still ace jack offsuit that I would play and ace 10 offsuit sometimes. Just
This
want to see how good it is.
Program gives the expected value for ace queen as 0.21 big blinds. Now, my question for you is, how many ace queens equal 1 aces? How many times being dealt ace queen equals being dealt aces? What's the difference in these expected values?
It's like 100% different.
So aces is double that. What do you mean 100?
No, a 10x.
It is 10x, exactly. Ace queen off is 10 times worse than aces. Now, if we compare another hand, would you play ace 7 suited under the gun?
Yes, I would, but you don't want me to look at the chart, but I know that I would.
Great. Now, the question for you is, how much worse is ace 7 suited than ace queen?
It's 10 times
Okay,
worse.
and worse than aces is it?
100.
100 times, exactly. I don't know if you feel like it matters much to you. Preflop range is an illusion in a way, because if there was ace 7 and the aces is however way you would visualize it, it would be 100 times more import. That's what I really mean about when you play and you're very focused on looking at your preflop ranges. If you're like most people, what you're focused about was king 7 suited included or not included. You really wouldn't need to look at the preflop range to know if you play pocket queens, for example. But king 7 suited, maybe you're unsure of. And the same thing like queen 2 suited, you would likely never play that hand. Although if we look at the expected value of like jack 2 suited here, even though it's negative, it's in perfect theory, it wouldn't be the end of the world if you played that one hand one time, because if the other players play perfectly, they would be worried that you had so many good hands. If you usually play like this and one time play Jack 2 suited, then it wouldn't harm you too badly. People, if they play correctly, would assume you to have a much stronger hand there. But again, that's in theory. In reality, people are likely just not thinking about all these layers to it. But going back to my point, something like King 7 suited you might look like. If you play that 100 times, that would cost you one big blind. Now, one big blind doesn't matter. You will play it 100 times if you play poker long enough. My big point, however, is there's probably something more important on the table in that 100 times that you will now notice if you don't look at the range. Why I'm saying this is I don't want you to lose this 0.01 big blinds because now you make a bad play and you don't look at the range. What I'm saying is it's probably fine for you to take that loss of 0.01 big blinds because now you have more energy space open up to look at what's going on the table, to recognize that one player has 4 big blinds, or to recognize all these things. They also add from hand to hand throughout the whole tournament. How much time goes looking at pre-flop ranges if you play 50 hands? All that time, if you're not looking at the ranges, would possibly make a difference or matter in terms of noticing something about the opponent, which in my belief would make a greater difference. Even this is what I recommended, I think, is after the tournament's over, if you still have question about like, did I play that correctly? Then to have a look at the range. After you do the play and the game's over, then to see, I played King 7 suit. I didn't have a good reason to maybe do better the next time with that. The point of this is I think a lot of these values here are quite negligible. They're quite small. And really, this is a very theoretical value. Based on my experience, a really great poker player could force that King 7 suited into being a profitable hand just by their skills. Being a bad poker player or not strong could mean that a good hand like Queen 10 suited could become a losing hand for that player because they are not skilled enough to take the correct decisions with it. With aces, even the worst players will win with aces. With 7-2 off, everybody loses usually similar way in 7-2. Some players might lose more with that, but in general, it's not a big difference if people have 7-2 or aces. But a lot of this in the middle, if you look at these numbers, there's a lot of extremely small numbers here. Numbers that are 10 times smaller than ace queen or 100 times smaller than aces. My real point of this whole thing, to summarize it, was to introduce this thing to you a little bit to show how close these decisions are, and that explains why ranges are different. Every range you look at, if it's a different maker, will be a little bit different because all these numbers are so close to nothing, and they're also theory numbers. That could mean it's very difficult in practice. For example, let's say, just to give some practical flavor to it, let's say I know this player's very loose and he will never fold. Let's make it even worse for this example. Let's say this player's very aggressive, really likes to re-raise me. They just keep on putting the pressure on me. I'm getting maybe angry about it. Really frustrating to me how they keep on re-raising. In theory, they should be re-raising once you open first position only 6.8%. They should be folding 91%. But let's say you played already that tournament 15 minutes. You already know this player under the gun 2, he's not going to fold 90%. He's going to raise more. He's going to call more. They're in position against you. And there's also the 7 other players there. How do you think that's going to impact your expected value of some of your weakest and some of your best hands, is my question. Let's start with the best hands. Maybe that's easier question. Let's say you have aces. Now you have this player who often calls or re-raises and makes these aggressive moves.
I make more money.
Okay, that means these hands get more valuable now.
Yes.
Okay, now what about some of the weakest hands, which really are hoping mostly for folds? Hands that are really trying to steal the blinds and don't really want to face much competition. Do these hands now get better or worse?
I think they get worse.
They do get worse, exactly.
Why do they get worse? They get worse because since he likes so much to be aggressive, there's a good chance I will have to fold. Because I have to give him the benefits of the doubt. I will have to fold a lot and I won't make a lot with those hands. And the conclusion is that in that case, I have to be more tight. And I must stop playing hands maybe below 8 suited or let's say ace 9 suited. And I should not play ace 8 suited and so on because he's too aggressive. Can I come to that conclusion?
Exactly. And you could say it's preflop 2.0, it's ChatGPT 4 or whatever. Because you see, a lot of people never in poker, even many years, never graduate from this part. That in their mind, there's no expected value, there's no difference. There's just a default strategy, that's their range. Maybe it's a little bit different, but it's just that standard thing they do. Even though it's robust in a way, there's some strength in that. In theory, it's like a good approach. It does like a lot of practical understanding of the differences. I think big part of the reason for it is this color scheme, which does not actually highlight the difference of aces and ace 4 suited, which is 100-fold. I would leave it at that for now.
It's great. Can I add one or two comments before we close? What you're teaching me is that there's a way to invest better my time. I should not concentrate too much on my ranges because it's mostly meaningless.
At your level, it's not meaningless if, let's say you're starting with poker. Will ranges be very important for someone who has no concept of under the gun, who doesn't know that under the gun should be tighter than the dealer button or the big blind calling range? They're extremely valuable. It's just that with your skill set, you have pretty much mastered the ranges, I would say.
Thank you for all those compliments. I'm not sure that's 100% correct, but still, it's nice to know. I should better invest my time in looking at my opponents. I agree with what you say, Norman, and I try to do it. It will take a long time. Now, the thing is, then we talk not about a simple thing like a chart and math. We talk about something much more complicated than that, about psychology. That is very hard because there's not something extremely clear that you can teach, I can follow, like a chart. To me, it's hard. It takes a lot of concentration because unfortunately I have a brain that always wanders off, goes in stuff that's not related to poker. Then I end up thinking about that instead of looking at my opponent. But I know that I can improve. Like you can improve when you meditate, I can improve and be more attentive to what my opponents do. Now, that's the first thing. The other thing I don't get is everything you showed me nearly was positive. And if not, the expected value was 0. If it was negative, I wouldn't play it. Then you jump to the conclusion that poker is a money-making machine. But I don't think that's possible because in trading, I cannot get my winning trades without also getting my losing trades. Because there will be moments I will get stopped out, and not every time when I get stopped out, it's at break even. I will have losing trades. I don't expect that I will ever be better than 33%. The rest I will lose. In trading, there's something similar, that some winners are just huge, like aces. And other winners, if they are winners, they might be just negligible and it doesn't matter. But just as in life, there are things that are very important and can have a huge impact on your future. For example, my pianist that I will see tomorrow, not tomorrow, in 2 days, she already has a diploma. She's making one more diploma right now as a pianist. That will add a little to skill level, but she could improve her skill on her own. But yes, getting one more diploma will add a little. Maybe for 1 or 2 jobs, it might have some impact. I'm not sure, but maybe it does. But the thing is, it is not the thing that will make a huge difference financially for her future. But for example, if she tries to get a permit to stay in Switzerland, that by itself would have a big impact on her financial future. There are things you should be more concentrated on, and other things you should be less concentrated on. For me, when I'm on the poker table, I should be more concentrated on my opponent. You have told me that again, and I perfectly agree, but it's just not an easy thing to do. But the idea that what you can answer is, it gives an illusion. What you show me, it gives the illusion that you only make money in poker. That cannot be the case. Just as in the markets, you cannot get only winning trades. Where are the losing trades? Where are the hands you play that lose you money? How come everything is green? Everything is supposed to make you money.
Exactly. You're correct in noticing that it shows, I guess it's how I work with here, that you could say it's displaying it maybe in a bit of a misleading way there. Because really, if you fold, you would lose the ante.
If you fold, you lose the ante. I didn't think about that. That's your losing trade.
There it displays folding as zero. It could be displayed in a different way.
So it's very similar to trading. And most of your hands, you will fold them. Depends where you are.
Exactly. Taking a small loss actually is most of the hands, really. And waiting for an opportunity to...
I try to do the same with trading. When I take losses, I always want them to be small. I don't like big losses. I don't mind how many times I have to try again, but I don't want a big loss. I really don't want a big loss. Today, I think I was stopped out for the 4th time on Bitcoin. I was also stopped out on Euro USD at break even, but I don't mind. My analysis hasn't changed. I still think there's a higher probability that we go to new all-time highs on both of them. No, euros is not at all-time high. I don't think it is. But I think they both go higher. But I don't mind. I want to wait, and I want to get some more confirmation that the wave 2, that I think that the correction is just a correction. Once I see that the correction is over, then I try again. I don't mind if I have to try 5, 10 times, but I don't want one big loss. People get lazy. They don't want to think about it again and again and try again. Then they put the stop loss too far away. Then they start taking losses that are too big. But for me, I rather try again as many times as necessary until it works than to take a big hit. Because for 4 times I did get stopped out at break even. That means that every time the market did turn in my favor. At least 100%. If not, I don't put my stop loss at break even. Sometimes much more than that. Then my stop loss was still hit. But at the end, I think that what I'm anticipating, that we go to new all-time highs, will still happen. People say, why take all those trades and not just put a larger stop loss? Because if I do that, and I do that on a regular basis, then it's harder. For me, it's harder because I have to make the money back. I don't want to have to risk too much. But I rather enter again and again until it works than to take a huge risk. I have to only enter once. So thank you for answering. Now I get why they are losing trades. It's all the hands you fold in poker.
Especially the big blind and small blind positions are the most punishing one.
Exactly. Awesome, Noah. It was a very interesting discussion. Anything you want to add or anything else you want to finish up?
With that is you were thinking about what to focus on a table, and I think you were talking something about the math. I don't remember exactly, but I wanted to ask you this. The best mathematicians in the world, are they the world's best poker players?
I don't think so.
Have you heard of any famous poker player like Daniel Negreanu? Maybe they're a math PhD or something like.
I don't think any are.
Or any of them famous psychologists that they're very good at like reading people's body language or stuff like any profession.
I think it's exactly the same answer, but here I will add something. I think that our psychology is crap. What we teach in university is crap. It's not real psychology. Because of that, if you practice that, the only thing you want to do is give meds. To me, you're not even the definition of a psychologist. You have very little knowledge about the human brain and human behavior, its desires, and how your patient can be happier than he is before he met you. What you could teach him that would improve your life. You don't know any of that. I think that our psychology is just crap. It's just a way of prescribing pills. We talked about it already. Those pills are not miracle pills. They do very little actually for the patient, very little. Because it was proven, they tested it, and they said when you're very depressive, how much do antidepressants help? The answer that was given is like going for a run once a week. I'm sorry, that's not a huge help. It's better than nothing, but it won't change your life from one day to the next. to me, yes, a poker player should be a very good psychologist because I think it's a lot of psychology. When you ask me to look at my opponents, analyze them, I think that's psychology, in my opinion.
Sometimes it's difficult teaching you
Why?
because every small question you turn into a little lecture. There's like a concept I want to get to, and then you start talking about everything in the universe, which is often fascinating and an interesting and a good thing.
I try not to be a robot zombie NPC. I try not to be like my piano teacher who tells me she only wants to focus on the piano. But then she tells me that friendship and everything else is so important to her. I try to be human and think about it. But you might be right. I get probably sidetracked too much and think about too much stuff that is not immediately useful. But for me, poker is interesting because of all the things it teaches me outside of the poker table, not just the poker table. That's too restricted for me. It might not be worth it. But everything else, then I get something back for the money I invest.
I guess it's to do with my memory. Sometimes I lose track of what I wanted to teach or where I was going. It is what it is. I think one thing I wanted to say was, you could say some sciences, maybe they were better in antiquity, dealt more with the substance of things. Now it's maybe more about just a business or teaching it, but how much like real substance is there to this figuring things out, even if they were, I think nowadays they talk often how they're wrong, like how ancient people got so many things wrong, but it's part of exploration is getting some things wrong. You could say nowadays there's little more than just the big point where I know you wanted to comment on your criticism of our sciences, which you can do in a moment. But the big point, what I wanted to get to was that I think there's a reason really that the psychologists aren't just winning all the poker tournaments or mathematicians, that it is a game of both things, really. It's a big game about finance, which is, even though it's related to these things, it's still a bit different. I guess you could say there's more business people in poker in general, like businessmen and things like that who like to play poker. Some do quite well than any scientists really in that way. I think shows why poker's quite a practical and pragmatic game in this way, that the theory is, you could say, with just like, it's not a very theory-based game. Otherwise, the theory people would be the strongest in it. I guess that's what I'm alluding to here. Now, the theories, certainly there's also business theory and all these things. I do think you need both of these things to do well. And last thought I have on this is, I actually studied both things in university. I didn't finish either degree, but I did go to study both psychology and math. What I learned was psychologists really don't like math. They're usually the type of people who are quite poor with math, I would say, based on my experience. That's an issue in poker.
You know, lawyers also don't like math.
I think that's a good one, yes. I think that's...
And judges and lawyers, they all hate math. That's probably why they do that kind of stuff, because they were bad at math. That's why they took something that is not as rigorous, something where you can make up crap.
I wanted to conclude something. Yeah, that's funny. I wanted to conclude something with that, which was that the math people who I met in university, a lot of them were the most social people or the best with socializing. Or you could say they were the best understanding psychology. At least that's how it seemed to me. That's really, in a way, the beauty of poker, that it's like an intermediary game. You don't really have to be very good either of these things, but need to be pragmatic and grounded. And I would say it's a lot like being a business person. You just have to be realistic. I do think theory and poker math is very important. I also think psychology is very important, but it's what to focus on is, it's tough to say, I guess. It's both of them, really, I guess, is the answer that I want to conclude this thought on.
I should work more on psychology. That's what you're teaching me.
It seems to me.
That's very good criticism. Your job is to make me a better poker player. I think you do a great job at that. Your criticism and your advice, your comments are awesome. I really appreciate all that, Norman. And just one little thing. The thing you said, that it's very hard to teach because you lose your train of thought and then it's hard for you to come back to what you wanted to teach me. That's why sometimes it's hard to have me as a student. You told me that. Now, for me, it's the same, because when you talk, you say a lot of stuff, and there's stuff I want to talk about, and I forget, and I cannot come back. Now, I nearly forgot this one too. You said psychology. Some people are bad at it. I don't think so. It's just they have never learned what real psychology is. And because of that, they have never practiced it. Because of that, they are bad at it. But I don't think that anybody is actually bad at psychology. Math, at a very high level, you have to be obsessed with equation and function and so on. And that's not for everybody because it's very abstract. But psychology is something so human that I don't think that you can be very bad at it. Now, some people will be very good at it, like Jacques Fresco. He, in my opinion, is one of the greatest psychologists we had. But that people are really bad at it, there's nothing they can do, I don't think so. It's not like math. Math, maybe you have to have an intellect that fits it if you want to do it at a very high level. Not at the level we do it while playing poker, but at a very high level, maybe you need to have the right intellect for it. But psychology, I don't think that's the same with it. That was my final conclusion, Norman. What you observed at university from people and how they act, how they talk, and how they think, that's all very interesting. That's a little what I have to do on the poker table with the people I see.
It's a game with people. They should not be excluded from the equation.
That's all very nice, but I have to learn how to put it in practice and what impact it has on my decision and up to what extent. I told you, when I started playing poker, I tried to do that and I realized that I mess up stuff more than I do good. I stopped doing it. And now I have to start learning it again. But the difference is that now I'm a much better player and I think I can do it more coherently and that it makes more sense and that in the end it will pay off and not just penalize me.
Excellent. Excellent. I think that's very great, Amore.
Awesome.
And hope you liked the lesson.
Awesome, Norman. I see you in 1 week. Thanks a lot. I wish you the best until then. I hope your time is awesome and that you feel great until I see you next time. And thanks a lot for looking at my book, buying it, and reading a couple of sentences. I really enjoyed that. That was a very nice gift from you.
I think we have quite a lot in common. Even though often I focus on being a contrarian or arguing, really there's a lot of your thoughts that I agree with. Actually, that reminds me, I recently thought about why governments seem to persist so long. I think big reason that came to my mind is because there was just elections going on here. And then I was thinking of my friends and people I know. Many of them were a government job or now were participating in this election, either to get to like a city council or something like that. It's just that it's very difficult to get rid of a system if there's so many people who their livelihood depends on that system, essentially. You could say they're as enemies in a way, the people who work for those. It's just an outlook on that. But even if not directly, you could say how many government jobs are there, but really so many. Like if you work in a school, in a kindergarten, if you work in a hospital, even if you work in a private sector, you could have a biggest client could be the government. I just started to think about how for a lot of people, it's just that they would never oppose the government for their own selfish reasons. I wanted to share that thought with you as you talk about it often.
It's a great observation, Norman. There's math behind it that proves what you say is true. The government was very small at the beginning in the 19th, the beginning of the last century, and it has steadily increased. Now the GDP, depending on the government, is huge. It's more than 50 or 60%. And that probably doesn't show the whole picture. That's just the money the government injects into the economy. But it doesn't show how many of the 40% left in one way or another also very deeply depend on the government. So yes, the government has infiltrated everything and is becoming a huge beast that is very hard to live without for everybody, unfortunately. Or for most people. I know very little people who are very self-sufficient, can say, I have nothing to do with the government. I don't think I have anybody who qualifies in that regard. So a great observation, Norman. Awesome. See you next week. Take care. Thanks a lot. And for all your time and all your effort. I really appreciate it.
want to say that, right? I want to say thank you. Thank you.
And there's one more thing I want to add. It just takes a second. You told me that even if I'm a contrarian and I play the devil's advocate a lot, which is interesting. I don't mind you doing that at all. Huh? I like that much more than people who just say everything is awesome, but they don't care. I like it much more if you tell me why I'm wrong and everything I did is crap. I like that much more than if you just say everything is awesome. But there's one more thing. You still, with time, I realize that you agree with a lot with what I say and what I think and what I teach. It's the same for a lot of people. Even if you give me a very woke person, let's say a woman with green hair or blue hair, she's extreme. She hates men. I guarantee you, if I spend 5 or 10 years with her, she would start to question a lot of her beliefs and realize that she actually is not against everything I say and everything I am. At the beginning, she would hate me like the devil, but with time, she would change her opinion. If I have enough time with her, we have enough discussion, she just doesn't run away, then her opinion would evolve. That's the beauty of philosophy and meeting new people and discussing stuff with them. The beauty is that you can learn and that you can change your opinion. It's the same for me. What I teach nowadays, I didn't think that 20 years ago. I learned it by studying the Stoic princes. One last thing, since it comes back to me. You told me that in antiquity, people thought a lot of things that is wrong. Depends on what? Technical stuff, yes. In a lot, technical opinions were wrong. Not all of them. They managed to do great things, but a lot of stuff was wrong, technically speaking. But if you look at the Stoic princes and you study them, you can read any one of them, any of those books. There's very little in it that you can say this is totally wrong. I really don't agree with it. Most, I would say more than 90%, 95%, or I would even go to 99%, hasn't aged and is still true. It's still as good now as it was then. When you read the Stoic princes or the opinions about the universe, certain stuff was wrong. But that's very technical stuff. For the rest, philosophy, psychology, ethics, moral, they were not behind us. I would even say they were ahead of us. Not all, but the great thinkers, the Stoic princes at least were.
All right. All the best.
To you too. See you next week. Bye-bye, Norman. Thanks a lot.